Mac Miller's new album, Balloonerism, that's his second posthumous album, the second album of his to be released after his passing, is about to drop. And this album's release was a decision made by his estate. And I often have mixed feelings when it comes to these post-death posthumous albums. It's really a mixed bag. And sometimes I listen to these after-death albums and I just wonder, like, would the artists have wanted this to come out? Would they have wanted this to be presented and released to the public? I mean, because different artists have different, varying degrees of like perfectionism. Some hardly release anything until they get it just the way that they want it. Others can just release something like it's no problem. They can just record, release, and they don't put too much pressure on themselves per release. One interesting thing about this Balloonerism album is that unlike the first Mac Miller posthumous album, Circles, which was released like nearly 2 years after his passing. Like the last album that he released right before he died was Swimming, and then he passed away in an accidental drug overdose. It was cocaine, alcohol, fentanyl. Fentanyl's often in those fatal drug mixes, but he passed away tragically, 26 years old, shortly after Swimming. And then again, Circles comes out a couple years later, and Circles kind of continued this artistic arc that he had been on, which really I thought took a turn on the 2016 Divine Feminine release. I remember when I first got into his music, it was around the time he dropped Kids, and then The Best Day Ever. Kids is the one where he had that Nas sample, Nike's on my feet, make my cipher complete. So he was like a MC's MC, right? He was just kind of kicking cool verses with a lot of wit, a lot of humor, and he was just kind of like that stoner kid kind of style. And at the time, I just looked at him as like basically Wiz Khalifa's little homie. I mean, they were both on Rostrum Records when they were coming up, both out of Pittsburgh. And I looked at Mac Miller as being the more lyrical but less charismatic Wiz Khalifa. I thought they actually had similar vibes, at least in that 2009 to 2011 time frame. But as time went on, I thought that Mac Miller's music was getting like more and more artistic. Now, I like that early stuff. I like Kids and Best Day Ever and that Blue Slide Park debut album. But as time went on, he had Watching Movies with the Sound Off, which at the time that dropped, that was my favorite Mac Miller project. We're talking 2013. And then he has like Good AM and a Faces mixtape. But then he starts getting more artistic. It starts becoming more art pop, where he's kind of blending genres, a little dream pop, a little experimental, and some woozy sounds, and singing a little bit more, and making music that wasn't just verse, chorus style of hip hop, where you've got like a beat that's more or less on a loop and he's just rapping to it. No, it started to get more complex and more genre blending as time went on. So after the Divine Feminine in 2016, then he dropped Swimming, which was far more radical than anything that he had dropped prior. And then he passed away, and then we got Circles, which again was on that increasingly artful career arch. But again, unlike that, this upcoming release, Balloonerism, is going back to 2014. He recorded these Balloonerism tracks at around the same time he dropped his Faces mixtape, 2014. So don't go into this Balloonerism expecting to hear an even more matured sound from Mac Miller. No, this is rewinding the clock several album releases. This is before the Divine Feminine. So I'm looking for that lyrical verse kicking Mac Miller on this record, which again begs the question. Like, I read that he took this project very seriously and that it meant a lot to him and that he had plans on releasing it. But my thing is, why didn't he release it if he wanted to release it? I mean, he released several other projects. Why would he have been holding on to Balloonerism? That's why I wonder, is this something that the artist truly intended to be released? Which brings me back to my original question, or my original feeling around posthumous albums. Again, sometimes it works really well. Like the first couple Pac posthumous albums, Machiavelli, that was really, really good. But as time went on, they just kept on releasing Pac mixtapes, and it started sounding like more recycled verses and stuff that the artist, might have had like a piece of a verse or maybe a few lines or something, and they try to build more stuff around it, start bringing in features that never even met the artist, right? You've got featured guests that had no relationship with the artist. I mean, I heard that on Biggie Smalls' Born Again a couple years after he died, like 4 years after his passing. Biggie Smalls didn't know who Cash Money Records, the Hot Boys, were at the time, yet they were featured on a Biggie Smalls album. So sometimes I could get with some posthumous post-death music from an artist. Other times I'm like, wait a minute, like this sound, it either sounds uncooked, unfinished, it sounds like very patched together, like Pop Smoke. He was just on the upswing, but they kind of gave a half-baked album after he passed away, where you could tell this didn't have like the artist approval. The artist wasn't ready for this to go out. But there are differing arguments. Do you release stuff that the artist had just kind of in the vault, right? That never saw the light of day? I mean, it could provide income for the artist's family. So there are positives to it. But on the flip side of that, you get some half-baked stuff in a lot of cases. Like, you know, I could barely even listen to like the Michael Jackson release that what Timbaland produced. I think it was later revealed that that wasn't even like Michael Jackson recording those songs, something controversial like that. But yeah, there are a lot of times where it's kind of sketchy in terms of how this was put together, how it was finished, how it was produced or written, or you get the features from God knows where, just for the sake of allowing more product to be released for commercial purposes. So I'm hoping that this is it's an actual artistic statement from Mac Miller, and it's not just some patched together work that he never truly intended to be released. But yeah, some of you might have additional context around this album, but I know that the estate allowed for this to be released, but I also know that like SZA is on track 2, and SZA was just a budding artist at the time that Mac Miller died. So did Mac Miller, like in 2017, around the time SZA had like the Control album or mixtape, did Mac Miller work with SZA to go back to a 2014, because again, that's where these Balloonerism songs are coming from, reportedly. Did Mac Miller bring out a 2014 song, get SZA on it, and start gearing towards releasing this 2014 material? Or did whoever's putting the finishing touches on this Balloonerism album, did they just have SZA come in and feature on this DJ's Chord Organ track 2 song from Balloonerism? But yeah, I've always had mixed feelings about these posthumous releases. I mean, let me know what you think about, I don't know, XXX Tentacion. A lot of people didn't like his posthumous work, or, you know, Juice WRLD. It's kind of hit and miss with him. There's some Juice WRLD stuff that's pretty damn good, and he was a very prolific artist, but other artists, you could tell that they were out of music, that they didn't have that deep an archive, and that the producers and the people who were trying to put something together were just grabbing any last bits and morsels that they could from this artist to try to make something and complete it, right? Where you could tell, yeah, I mean, it sounds like it badly mixed. It sounds like the artist, you know, was just kind of putting the sketches of a verse together, and they didn't even really want this to be like the final version. We get some of that. And recently we had a Beatles song that was completed, that was written by John Lennon and completed by Paul McCartney and some artificial intelligence, and I think the son of Beatles producer George Martin. But they put this Now and Then, I think the song was called, they put it together, and I really wondered if John Lennon ever really had any intention of releasing this song, and if he would have been satisfied with the finished product, you know what I mean? But yeah, I'm gonna listen to this Mac Miller Balloonerism album, but I hope that this is being released for the right reasons and not just for commercial purposes. I hope that this truly is an artistic statement. But again, don't expect this to be in the vein of anything from the Divine Feminine or after. This isn't going to sound like Swimming or Circles. This is going to be closer, at least time period wise, it's probably going to be closer to watching movies with the sound off, or Faces, something like that. But yeah, let me know your thoughts about this posthumous Mac Miller release, Balloonerism, in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you love music like I do. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.